Rotted Reviews, and today it's another movie review at the behest of the Rotted Requesters tier of my Patreon. This time, this request comes from Jaki, who requested the 1976 movie The Witch Who Came from the Sea. Originally one of the 72 video nasties that finally got released in full in the UK in 2006, but until then, it was not allowed in its full cut. And so I asked Jaki, why do you want me to review this movie in particular? And she says, well, not a lot of people have seen it. She thought it was a sad movie. And she also wants me to kind of weigh in on why I think it was a video nasty in the first place. Which I get that. After having watched this movie, I think it's a rather good question. Written by Robert Thorne and directed by Matt Cimber, this movie stars Millie Perkins as Molly, who is a, well, fairly... I don't know how best to put this. She ain't right. She's interacting with her two young nephews and talking about her father, who was lost at sea and may yet return someday, so on and so forth.
It's a long way from pole to pole, with many an island and many a mermaid betwixt and between.
Clearly has a high amount of opinion regarding her father, sees a handsome man on television for a shaving commercial and says, oh, that's the spit of him. That's Dad right there. Meanwhile, her sister's kind of, what the fuck you talking about there? Not even close. So on and so forth. And, there seems to be a big discrepancy between the virtues that she extols upon the memory of her father and reality from the memories of other folks weighing in. She also works as a waitress for a nautical bar. Everything about this movie has kind of a rundown maritime theme going on. Hints of decay, barnacles, alcoholism, and murder surround this film. And so yes, in all of her delusion and so on and so forth, Molly is also murderous. She lures men and so forth with sexual endeavors, and in the meantime, well, kills them. And while she's kind of spiraling out of control and going down the rabbit hole that she's going down, more truth kind of gets revealed to the audience and to her about who her father actually was. In her case, it's more repressed memories surfacing and being confronted with the actual truth more than it is actually learning new information. Believe me, she knows just how fucked up this situation is. And so here's the weird thing, is as far as it being a video nasty, and I understand, like I said, why there was confusion on Jaki's part in terms of, that attribution. Why was this censored? Why was this prevented to get any kind of release in the UK? And I think that really what it comes down to is the implied graphicness of it. Because if we're just talking about what actually shows up on the screen itself in terms of actual gore, nudity, anything along those lines that would ordinarily trigger a video nasty kind of element, this really was a little bit tame. As far as nudity, it was pretty much just boobs and butts. As far as gore, it was pretty much just, fake blood, that kind of thing. There wasn't really a whole lot there. So again, why video nasty? And I think it has to do, like I said, with the implied stuff. The fact is, this movie really tackles some difficult elements, and it does have scenes involving very tricky elements. Things that if I were to actually utilize the words properly, would get this video demonetized right quick. So this is not without sins. It's just the fact of the matter is it kind of kept them into the shadows. It was clever about how it used the camera and what scenes to trim down, what to show, what not to show, while at the same time ultimately revealing the truths of some really terrible sins. It's one thing for a movie to show a sexual encounter. It's another thing for it to be non-consensual. It's another thing entirely for it to continually ramp up the awful, terrible, dehumanizing, and just immoral aspects of that. And same thing with the murders. It really didn't show a whole lot, but it was still gruesome in its own right through a lot of the implication and what it didn't show us. So when we are dealing with elements involving the R word or the I word or both simultaneously, it's not something that I can see censorship boards really turning a blind eye to. Even though it didn't actually show terribly graphic content. So that being said, what do I think about this movie? I honestly did. I have to agree with Jackie. I thought it was a terribly sad movie, but it was interesting. I found myself really being engaged by it. I would not have found it sad otherwise. I mean, there has to be some sort of an emotional connection to elicit those emotions. And I honestly did kind of care about the Molly character. I cared about the influences of the people around her. I cared about her nephews. There were elements in play there that I did latch onto, and it sold me on that. This had a little bit more of kind of a rough feel to it. It had a bit of a grindy kind of feel to it. So I'm not going to say that this was a completely captivating, really well polished watch, but I was kind of surprised that it grabbed me as much as it did. And I think a lot of that comes down to Millie Perkins' performance as Molly, which I honestly thought was pretty exceptional. The nature of the character and how unhinged she could be, while at the same time also trying to just get through her normal day-to-day life and just keep the bad thoughts at bay. You could tell that she knew the repressed memories were there, but she just didn't want to acknowledge them, keep them buried, keep them hidden. Meanwhile, all this bad behavior and terrible activities are that's what's rising up to the surface and causing her to do terrible things. And you could see all of that in Millie's performance. So I'm kind of hesitant to give a blanket recommendation for this one. I do think that it's not the kind of movie that's going to appeal to all tastes. It's not the kind of thing that I would just say is perfect for all horror movie lovers. It's just not. But if the idea of having a mid-70s character study of awful immorality set against a rotting maritime kind of backdrop, if that sounds like it's something that appeals to you, then yes, I do recommend the 1976 movie The Witch Who Came from the Sea. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.